Welcome to Education for the 21st Century. My name is Dr. Floyd Beecham, and this show takes a look at educational issues from different kinds of perspectives. And in the context of this show, what we'll do is we'll talk to educational researchers, practitioners, and administrators with regard to different kinds of educational issues of interest. And today, we have Dr. Tina Richardson. And to introduce Dr. Richardson, I'll hand over the speaking to Tashina.
Hello, my name is Tashina Kabaz. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Richardson joined the Penn State family in July 2015 as chancellor of Penn State Lehigh Valley and is a 25-year resident. Her work on campus has been focused on three main priorities: academic excellence, campus visibility, and enrollment. Dr. Richardson was a faculty member in Lehigh University's College of Education for 20 years. During her time at Lehigh, she was a director of the Counseling Psychology program and a special assistant to the provost for National Science Foundation-funded Leadership Initiative for Women in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. She most recently was an associate dean at Drexel University, where she provided leadership related to academic program development and evaluation, faculty professional development, and the promotion and tenure process. Dr. Richardson earned her bachelor's in psychology, master's, and doctorate in counseling psychology, all from the University of Maryland. Welcome, Dr. Richardson.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, awesome.
Thank you for joining us, and we're going to jump in right away with the questions. And our first one is,
You may want to introduce yourself too, forget.
my name is Ilia Morales, and I work in the College of Education here at Lehigh University. So we would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about your journey to your current position as Chancellor of Penn State Lehigh Valley.
You know, my journey to this position as Chancellor really happened over an extended period of time where I was most committed to developing competencies that would result in me being able to have the biggest impact on promoting education for those who are oftentimes aspirational but don't know the pathway to college, and certainly have challenges as they access the pathway. So I grew up in Maryland, and that's how I ended up at the University of Maryland. I only applied to one college. Not because I didn't know that you could apply to more, but because that was the college, the university that made the most sense to me. And it was my intention to go to the University of Maryland to get an undergraduate degree, and a PhD was really what I was after. And I applied to graduate programs after I completed my undergrad degree and realized that I had the best mentor at the University of Maryland. And so I stayed. But when I was going through the interview process, I didn't realize that until every institution that accepted me for a PhD program in counseling psychology said you could continue to work with Dr. Janet Helms
Yes.
if you attend, if you attend our institution. And it dawned on me that Dr. Janet Helms was the person that I needed to stay very close to and develop as a professional. I was fortunate. I had that. I didn't always know I had it, but I had that available to me. And through the process of my training, I realized that I wanted to become that for other individuals in the higher ed space. And so I collected a wide array of competencies in terms of teaching and scholarship. I really had an opportunity to refine my commitment to service and to define what it meant to be a part of a community broadly defined. And then I realized that I was sought after, but I didn't do any of the things that I did to be sought after. I did it because I wanted to be a good citizen. I wanted to figure out how to help other people. And that was ultimately why I chose to become a counseling psychologist. So over the course of what is now a 28-year career in higher ed, I was considered for deanships and presidencies, and I selected Penn State Lehigh Valley as a place to become a chancellor, where I felt it was the best fit for me to be able to do the work that I was passionate about.
Great, great. I can see. I feel like I could take over this conversation because I feel like you and I have a lot of commonalities already. But we'll continue on. Thank you.
Yeah, that's excellent. And then in your response, you talked a little bit about the challenges that your students face. But what are some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
I think there is significant overlap between the challenges that I face, even at this point in my career, and the challenges that many of the students that we want to better serve face. There is oftentimes a desire to achieve certain goals, but not know how to get there because the mentors aren't available. The pipeline, when you're in it, isn't actually clear. There was a point in my career where I'm reading all these articles that talk about higher ed leadership, and they tell you that in 2020 the demographics will have changed so much that we're going to see more diversity in higher ed leadership. We're going to see more presidents. We're going to see more this, more that. And I had done a number of leadership programs, but I was wanting to write this manuscript about how to access the pipeline because there's no clear access point where you can say, I'm now in the pipeline.
Right.
And many of the young people that I interact with, they have aspirations to earn a degree, to have a certain type of job, a certain type of lifestyle, but they don't know how to get from where they are to where they want to be. They don't know who to ask, or they've randomly asked people in hopes that they're asking the right person.
Right.
And they don't necessarily get the receptivity that would be ideal, and so they're discouraged. And so for many of the students, they describe feelings that I've had at different points in my career, and that motivates me to want to continue to do the work that I'm doing, regardless of how tired I get, regardless of how frustrated I get. They look to us, and they want to know that we haven't given up, especially when we're telling them not to give up.
Right.
So, you made a comment a few minutes ago about feeling a sense of connection. That is key. I think regardless of what position you rise to, or sometimes what position you fall to, there has to be multiple points of connection if we're going to help the next generation.
Yes, very, very well stated. And I think as leaders, one of the things we have to do is kind of remember what that experience always is on the other, sort of on the other side of the desk, table, whatever the case may be, but to be able to empathize with the people we serve.
Absolutely.
What are some of the most important lessons that you have learned throughout your professional journey? Besides connection, of course.
Well, I think one of the most important things that I've learned is that no does not mean no. When it's about what you aspire to, what you're motivated to achieve or accomplish, you may receive a response of no or non-response, that could very easily be interpreted as no. But what I've learned is not yet, or not through that means or that avenue. And so that's what I try to teach. That's what I try to model. I try to be a catalyst and try to inspire. It's also how I might also be an agitator, because no does not mean no to me. And so there's always this desire to find a new path. And sometimes I have to reframe so that the answer can become yes. But that was one of the most important lessons.
I've never heard that. That's fantastic.
I do like the not yet, because I have heard of schools using that to grade their students' work.
Mhm.
basically saying not yet, as opposed to giving a C, a D, or an F for their work. So I hope that will catch on. And so you have talked a little bit kind of hinted about this already, but can you describe your leadership style?
So I would describe my style as transformative. Wherever you enter into someone's life, whether it's in the workplace and you're a supervisor or you're the leader of a unit or a campus, we have to help units and individuals transform from where they are to the goals and priorities that have been set. As a result, there is a reasonable expectation that leaders have the ability to transform by complementing the skill set that people bring to the table, what they bring to work each day, what they bring to a collaborative space each day, and help it to elevate to the next level. Sometimes it's the elevation, and sometimes it's the redirection. Everything's not, vertical, but sometimes we need to reframe, and sometimes we need to reassess. And so my intention is to be, transformative in my work, but there has to be an investment, a meaningful investment in human capital. Everybody brings something. And when you put the right combinations together, you get a talent base that is unmatched by what any one individual or two individuals could do. So I definitely resonate toward transformational, but with that human capital investment. So that human resources piece is important.
And then, yes, and and this conversation happens in the context of the sort of theme of the show is education for the 21st century, and which leads us to the idea of, well, what skills do you believe that today's leaders in higher education need in order to create a successful environment for all?
That's a broad question, and whatever I say next is only going to scratch the surface on what's needed.
Gotcha.
But I think it starts with a sense of connection. It is very difficult for me to be at all effective with a diverse range of students or staff or faculty if I don't have some really authentic points of connection. If I don't see why certain relationships are important, certain traditions are important, even if they might need to grow or change or be modified over time. And so what resonated with me from a very young age from my family was, what are you going to do to improve the community that you reside in? And that community can change. I can move from one job to one part of the country to another. But if I'm going to lead something from any location, I have to build that community, be connected to that community, support that community. And so when I see that disconnect, I can pretty much be confident that the outcomes won't be achievable, that people won't trust the leader, people won't reach out to the leader, they won't suggest or recommend ideas for how they could do things differently or how they might grow in that environment. They won't map out a plan for their own development because they don't have the relationship. There's not that sense of community where it's a safe place to do the work. And you can translate that to the elementary school student, and you can translate that to the leadership team at any institution, any organization.
Yeah, and that's powerful. And what resonated with me was when you mentioned the idea of changing any community in which you reside. It makes me think back to historically, there's a perspective on education that education isn't just for you and your own individual achievements, but education is for the community. What are you going to do with that education to better not only yourself, those around you, and society in general? So it's good to hear that historical lineage still permeating, the way some of us embrace our education and utilize it.
Absolutely.
So what type of challenges have you faced as a woman and a woman of color in a leadership role in higher education?
I honestly believe that I have faced the same range of challenges that a male might face or a non-minority might face. But there are some unique dimensions to it. As a chancellor, I'm expected to fundraise. So I'm going to have all the same fundraising challenges. But I have to think a little bit about how my presentation, which may have the same content, might be received. When I go into work and I'm, having a bad day because something happened at home, my child somehow managed, in spite of having two highly educated parents and that work in university settings, they somehow managed to fail an English test on grammar. So I might arrive to work with a little bit of an attitude that has nothing to do with work or the people who I might encounter the first part of the day. I have to be cognizant of the fact that, not speaking, not greeting, not taking the time to say, hello, how are you, how's your family, did you have a good weekend, how that will be perceived. Everybody might experience that, but how it might reverberate for me as a woman and a person of color can also have a very interesting twist to it. For me, personally, I get up each day and I have a set of goals and objectives. And I'm not thinking about the fact that I'm a woman and an African American. Those are things that are just so much a part of my ethos. And so I wake up motivated to make a difference. But I understand that, I might wake up and start the day a particular way, but everybody's not waking up that same way. And so there's a level of which I have to be sensitive to the experiences that other people have when they interact with me, either close up or at a distance. Because things can be projected, whether you had an interaction that you were aware of or not. And I have to also allow myself the latitude to be myself, even when other people would not like to allow me. Because that really isn't, their power. That's mine. So, I have to be sensitive enough, compassionate enough, and also astute enough to give the best response, and sometimes it's a political response, but it always has to be an authentic response to leading in a society that has certain social constructs that put me in the eyes of others at a disadvantage, but in my eyes puts me in a position where I have sensitivities to things that other people may not even think about in the course of a day or their entire life.
Right.
So I experience what everyone else experiences, but it is personalized, and I have to figure out what my strategies will be. And I also have to have a network of people around me who will say, you might want to rethink your authentic response.
Right.
So, I have to have a space for humor, I have to have space for seriousness, and I have to give myself permission to say I am accountable, and I have to insist upon certain types of behaviors and outcomes from the team that I'm supposed to lead so we can fulfill our mission to serve students. So it's complex,
Yep.
but I wouldn't put it on an island all by itself. And you could pick any topic and I could tell you my challenges are going to be similar to everyone else's, but my strategies might have to be tweaked to match the circumstances.
And do you find that creating that balance easy? Or I know I'm going off script here.
It's all right.
So is that a balance that you think you have had to learn over time? Is it something that you grew up with? Is it something that comes naturally to you?
I think a lot of what we are able to do, we learn. So I didn't come here thinking I was going to have to come into this world thinking I was going to have to navigate
Right.
issues of social class, race, and gender, but I've had to do it throughout my entire life. And so I was fortunate in that I had a family and a community around me that could help me learn how to do that. Some of the students that I encounter are beginning to process that as a college student for the first time in the way that they might need to in order to navigate the academic space. It comes easy to me now because I've done it for so long. But I would say first day out of the gate, I think it's like any other skill that an individual needs to develop. The analogy could be very easily made to sports. If you remember whatever that sport was that you were passionate about, that first team that you were on, T-ball when you kept missing the ball, even though it was stationary. I think, it takes time to develop the fluency. It takes time to consistently believe that you have the ability to do it. And that comes from experience.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest lesson right there, and the one that students might want to hold on to, whoever is listening right now, because as a Hispanic woman coming from Puerto Rico, I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about, especially having to learn to navigate all of that, the expectations and all of everything that comes with all of the labels that are placed on us. So switching topics a little bit, what is, in your opinion, the biggest issue that higher education is facing today?
I'm going to give you one or two things, and but they would all need to be unpacked. So I think that the access to quality education is really the biggest. But access to quality education from pre-K, it's not access just at the post-secondary level, because it's very difficult to access at the post-secondary level if you didn't have the quality experience before. And the number of students receiving that quality foundation seems to be decreasing. And so as educators and as motivators and mentors, we're challenged to help people gain access, young people gain access that may not have started with that quality pre-K experience, didn't get the quality kindergarten, elementary experience, maybe caught up a little bit at middle school, maybe, but that still means they're behind. And then they get to high school and they want college. They might even be bold enough to tell you that they want it, that that's their goal. But the access isn't as easily done because they don't have the best foundation. And what we have to do is figure out how to empower them, encourage them, and where necessary, put them on that pathway to shore up their foundation so that they can excel. Access, but it's, we often ask in terms of higher education, but it is all that education that happens before higher education that's important. And, we have to find ways to help individuals develop resilience. We can't just applaud when someone manages to go through a difficult set of circumstances and present to us when they get to higher ed as resilient. We can't just applaud the fact that they made it there and that they're resilient. We have to make sure that we're investing at every level in the resilience so that access, becomes easier and broader.
Yeah, and I would like to reiterate those comments with regard to resiliency and how do we, making sure our students get those sort of those habits of the mind with regard and turn those into the habits of resiliency across the span, because just because you've climbed one mountain and you've reached the mountaintop, you look up and there's another mountain essentially. So you finish undergrad or you finish high school, and you want to go into college. You climb the college mountain, it's like, oh, now I got to get a job, now I have to go to graduate school. So, with resiliency in your backpack, knapsack, or whatever you want to call it, it's certainly an excellent tool.
Absolutely.
So, as we're reaching sort of the end of our stated questions, we have an opportunity here for a couple things. Any final questions as the result of this great conversation, and then we'll have some final words.
Like I said before, I could take over. There's so much that I could ask because I feel like, as I hear you talking, I can relate so much to your experiences. But I think that the biggest lesson or the biggest message here is both persistence and development of resiliency, and then the need for a broader access to quality education at every level.
And definitely building those connections.
Yes. Dr. Richardson, any last words as you're getting ready to, leave us? This is a bit of a return home for you.
Yes. I love the opportunity to talk with educators and those who understand the power of education, so that we can, brainstorm on how to provide the most for students, how to provide the most in the broader community, and podcast experiences like this are much more accessible than some of the things that happen in the academy.
Right.
And so I think it's so important for us to take these conversations out to local communities, urban environments. We have to demystify the education process. We have to answer the questions that are being posed by those community members who are sitting on the outside of the ivory tower, wondering what's going on behind the wall. And so my last comments would be to continue to do what you're doing. It is so needed. And if there's any way that I can support it, I will absolutely lend a hand.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And by you being here today, this is, you've shown your support by your presence in actuality. And with that, we'd like to go ahead and we're going to, as we conclude this particular episode of Education for the 21st Century, I'd like to thank the team once again, Dr. Morales, Tashina, our guest, Dr. Richardson, here today, folks. If you haven't seen our first vodcast, go ahead and make sure you check out the first one, which was it last month?
Last month?
Yes.
Last month was our sort of inaugural show. We will have another one coming up in about a week or so. So make sure you stay tuned for that one too. Once again, folks, Education for the 21st Century. Again, we'll be signing off. And thank you to the team, thank you to our guests, and thank you very much for watching and listening wherever you are. Stay tuned.